All right. Bon après-midi, tout le monde. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Call the meeting to order.
Your worship, we have an agenda before us and there are no changes.
Excellent. Is there somebody who wishes to move the adoption of the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Legier, seconded by Councillor Richard. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
There are no minutes for approval. Next would be the declaration of conflict of interest et déclaration des conflits d'intérêts.
I don't see any. I think we're good.
Okay, so now we're on to new business, is Affaires Nouvelles. And today we have an update from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch Number 6 and Danse Encore 2024 grant reporting. And to introduce this will be Isabelle LeBlanc.
Ça fonctionne? Bon, on va s'habituer. Alors,
Is it working? Your worship, members of the council, good afternoon.
we allocated some funds to the Legion for some additional seniors programming to help us fill some of the void. There were two instances. So the first allocation was for an amount of $49,000 for the Legion for seniors programming that ran from February to August. Subsequent to that, we also allocated a second amount to the Legion later in the fall, so in September, in the amount of $28,000. But we also added an amount of $20,000 to Danse Encore pour ajouter et améliorer la programmation offerte aux
In order to improve programming for Francophone elders.
It was asked that the grant budget be increased by $134,000, of which $77,000 would go towards the Legion and $57,000 would go towards Danse Encore for some programming in 2025. Added to this, council had asked that both organizations come before council to present how they had spent their 2024 funds and also what they plan on doing with their 2025 amounts. Should that be to council's satisfaction, the funds would then be released. Important to note that this is to be funded from the 2024 council contingency budget. So today, we're really happy to have both organizations here. Nous avons avec nous Bob Dupuis.
So I have with me Bob Dupuis from the Royal Canadian Legion number 6 and Chantal Cadieux, Artistic Director for Danse Encore.
Presentation is teed up first.
It looks like Danse Encore. Is that
So in addition to this, as Chantal or Estelle is getting ready, in your package, you will see a more detailed report that explains in much more detail in addition to the presentation that they are going to be making.
Excellent. Bienvenue. Juste pousser sur le micro.
Welcome. So can you please press the on button on the mic? 1, 2, testing. Good afternoon, everybody. It is quite a sunny winter day. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Chantal Cadieux, Artistic Director and founder of Danse Encore that was created in 1979. So I am part of the elder group now. I'm very pleased to be able to present on the program that we launched this fall. I was born and raised in Moncton, and I also dance in Moncton. So I will introduce Essay Dupuis, my assistant, who will have the floor for the next few minutes. Thank you very much. We are delighted to be here this afternoon. We want to thank the city for having us. For starters, I'd like to mention Monica and Helene that supported us in creating and setting up the program for elders. And it is a resounding success. So I work in the field of communications, marketing, and community engagement in the context of the program. So quickly, we'll give you an overview of this program for elders. So it is focused on physical activity and social interaction for elders in our community. So we'll give you a little review of the 2024 programming. So we launched, it was launched on October 1st, 2024, during World Elder Day with an open house day. We had a cake. We tried to attract as many people as possible. A lot of people came to attend. We had a line dancing group. We started having a few registrations. So at the time, our program was had 3 lessons a week: body alignment, chair yoga, dance therapy, and line dancing. And very quickly, thanks to word of mouth, people learned more about the program and we had more registrants. So after the first 3 months, we had more than 60 participants, people who would regularly attend lessons and courses at the cultural center. We taught over 40 movement classes over those 3 months.
Surtout la population francophone.
Courses are provided in a bilingual format, but are especially geared towards the Moncton population. All staff is bilingual, but we do have a lot of feedback from people from the community who have finally found a place where there's a place for French-speaking people. So the Danse Encore studios are located at the Aberdeen Community Center, so it's very French-speaking environment. Although we are open to everybody and we have a nice diversity of people attending, we have created a suggestion box that we made available for elders and participants. And we have received a few suggestions that we're going to try to implement during the next session.
De faire des discussions,
Among those suggestions, people recommended that we should discuss certain aspects more in depth. And there was also a gift wrapping activity that was suggested. I will show you a picture of this activity. So people brought gifts and presents and we wrapped them together to the sound of Christmas music. So some people brought Christmas desserts. It was really a positive experience for everybody. And we also brought some wrapped gifts to the children of the Moncton Head Start program. There's 2 other pictures. There's a picture of Roxanne teaching line dancing. So as you can see, people are moving and dancing. And the next picture is Chantal giving a body alignment class. And as you can see, some participants are 80 years and older. And people are having fun, moving around, being physically active, and pushing their limits. So it's very nice to see. We also have a picture of the chair yoga, a very popular activity. Classes are always sold out. There's a maximum number of 25 participants. Sometimes we manage to add a few chairs, but it's something that's super popular among elders. We had the good fortune of being able to create a partnership with the Théâtre L'Esclaouette in order to be able to access parking spaces, because there's not a lot of parking spaces at the Aberdeen Center. So we approached Théâtre L'Esclaouette in order to be able to share parking spaces. So we have parking passes that people can put on their windshields and they can go park there for the time they spend at the Aberdeen Center. Because during the daytime, Théâtre L'Esclaouette parking is not very busy. And this agreement will be extended to 2025. So we're very happy about that. for 2025. So we've already started our winter session. We've added a class thanks to popular demand. It is now offered twice a week, and there's 3 sessions. There's a winter session, a spring session, and a fall session. 4 classes per week. We added some classes because it was very popular. So what we are potentially going to do for the next session is to add a meditation class, as was suggested several times in the suggestion box. So we're trying to meet people's needs and people's interests. So at the end of 2025, we will have taught 120 movement classes, in addition to providing social spaces for people to play games, to organize various events or activities.
Planifie faire des ateliers de nutrition.
For example, we are planning on setting up nutrition workshops to help people
Sur leur tablette.
get more for a bigger bang for their buck when they do their groceries. There's also a workshop that we're planning to offer about fraud, preventing fraud among elders. A reading club, a book club were also mentioned. So we are going to try several things to make sure that we keep our activities as interesting as possible for our participants. I have 2 short clips to show you. Let's see if it works.
Il y a des gens qui chantent aussi, ça devient.
We do have people singing, so people love to sing. There's a lot of enthusiasm during those classes. So this was the line dancing class, the body alignment class too.
J'ai vraiment juste des petits extraits, là. Je voulais pas gêner les.
So those are short little clips of to give you an example of what we do, and you can tell based on people's faces how much they like it.
Beaucoup de témoignages. Les gens voulaient nous.
We've had a lot of testimonials from people who love the program. So a lot of messages were sent to Monica and several of us. So this is one of the messages that we received. A lady who told us that she's 80 years old and trying to stay in her own home, and that she really wants to stay independent. We received a lot of testimonials from people suffering from isolation and depression who started attending those classes, and they were very shy and unsure. And after registering and after starting participating and attending, this made things way better for them. We had 4 or 5 people who told us that they haven't been crying ever since they started attending our classes. So we're focused on physical activity, yes, but we also target social isolation among elders. So we can see the direct results in real life of the positive aspects of taking part in those activities. It's a beautiful thing to see. We also had an older lady who could not really use her hand anymore. She was not able to fill her registration form or use her hand. And now she's not wearing her brace anymore. Her hand has become more mobile again, and she realizes that she can now brush her hair as well. So her independence increased just because she started taking part in those activities. So her self-confidence is quite amazing compared to what it was before she started attending our activities. And all of this was after 3 months of physical
Des témoignages comme ça.
activity.
Euh,
So
oui,
it is a very holistic approach that we have that meets the needs of people, but also showing that physical activity also has a social dimension that is not to be neglected at all. So the impact on the community is huge. And there's also a an intergenerational aspect that cannot be understated, because sometimes, because our spaces are also used by preschool children. So when preschool activities finish, elders arrive. So there's a bit of an interaction between the two cohorts. It's quite interesting to see.
80 inscriptions.
We have 80 participants who signed up. All classes are sold out, so people can sign up for classes a week in advance to maximize the number of people who can enjoy those classes. So we have about 100 elders at the center every week, and sometimes we're just sold out. And if the class is sold out and the elder that just showed up cannot participate, then they just hang out and have fun. So that's it for our prepared notes. We are now ready to take your questions if you have anything to ask us. Did I forget anything? Well, I hope I didn't go too fast, but we just had 5 minutes. I had a lot of things to say, so I hope you will excuse me. Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Councillor Bourgeois, can we ask questions for to each group individually? Yeah, just one question. Maybe I missed that bit, but do you charge participants a fee? No, it is entirely free, which is really appreciated by elders. So those who cannot typically afford different kinds of activities really appreciate that. But a lot of them mentioned that given their limited budgets, they would not be able to partake in such activities if they had to pay a fee. So for us, it's a very positive aspect of the whole programming. For it to be free is something that that's really important for us. It also makes things easier. We have one less thing to manage, no registration fees. You show up or you can sign up in advance, but it's for free. I'd like to ask Ms. Leblanc a question now, if I may.
Subvention de la ville de Moncton.
Are there any other subsidies from the city of Moncton that can be compared to what your organization receives? So I don't know if the Legion charges fees for any kinds of activities, but do we subsidize cultural, sports, or artistic groups that provide activities, that offer activities for free to their participants? I'm not familiar with all the programs offered to the public, but to my knowledge, there are other programs that are offered for free, but maybe Monica would be able to provide a more detailed answer. So most of the groups that we have partnerships with, we try to reduce the costs and the fees, because if we subsidize them, we want to make sure that they are affordable for everybody and everybody can participate. So some of them have like minimal fees that they charge. For elders, it's something that comes back very often, the importance of offering this programming for free. For youth, we have cost reduction initiatives as well, but it doesn't mean that we can offer all of our programs for free. But I would say that most of the activities of the group that we have a partnership with charge a small fee. So it's the first time I've heard about this program, and I will ask the question again, but maybe it's going to be a no, but would it be possible to charge a little fee? Maybe if it's just like $1 a class, or I don't know how much of a difference it would make for participants. Well, it's the management aspect of that, of collecting the fees, because we want to focus on offering good activities that are interesting for participants, that meet their needs. And then the city makes a decision in light of what we offer. So right now, the way things are done right now with the website, it would not be able for an elder to register and then pay a fee. So I can register. So who should be responsible for collecting the money? So you have to manage a number of registrations, Are these people gonna attend on a regular basis? Do they have to become a member of the Dans Son Corps organization? Because we have people who are members because it's a non-profit. So we have a board of directors with members and people who are not. So it makes things difficult to manage. We also have dance classes where people can pay a fee, but it's not to become a member, it's to take the class. So this way, it makes things way easier and way more democratic to not charge anything.
Discrimination, peu
And
importe,
that way, it is non-discriminatory.
qui veulent contribuer pourraient
But
contribuer.
it doesn't mean that elders who want to contribute cannot contribute. We have to find a way of enabling that. But that's the way it's been working. We want to maximize the usefulness of the subsidy that's provided by City Council because we make those activities available to anyone. And it also helps us explore other ideas too. We have a staff member, Gabrielle, who spends about 3 hours a day managing registration. So if you add the extra task of collecting fees, well, it would make things way too complex. So we try to keep things as simple as possible. We talked about that with the team, so maybe we'll revisit that and we'll figure things out. But with the available funding right now, we can offer our programming for free and it makes it easier to manage. We can save some money as well and keep this money for maintenance and paying people who provide the classes. Thank you, Your Worship. If I may add, as you know, we have a dedicated person for elders and youth, Ellen Jeffries, and I think that's part of our thinking. How can we offer activities, what works best, how can it be planned as efficiently as possible to make sure that as many activities are offered to elders and to optimize participation. We want to make sure people can receive as many services as possible. So I think it's a beautiful pilot project with Dans Encore. We can see how it works, what the barriers are, and based on that, we'll be able to plan better for Dans Encore, but other programs as well. Councillor Richard. Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for your presentation. I really liked the little video clips that you showed us. It makes you want to attend.
À la façon dont vous avez décrit ça, il y en a qui ont
The way you described it, some people attend for the physical activity aspect, but a lot come for the social aspect. So I think it's win-win for everybody.
puis se donner des cols, puis ça.
And also you mentioned the fact that elders would meet younger people, and I think that's something very important. Thank you so much. A lady told Chantal that so her husband died, they had no children, and she loves children, but she said, I can't go to a park and watch children. That's kind of creepy. So when she attends her classes, she comes a little bit earlier to be able to take a look at the kids and stick around and try to interact with them. So it's it was a very cute comment that we had. And I think it's a very important aspect of what we do at the center. So it creates an environment where people can interact. It's not just about offering a service. And it's not something that we anticipated, but it's a very positive aspect. Bringing people together, bringing different generations together. So we always talk about the positive aspects of intergenerational interactions, right? But at the center, we are able to see it in real life happening in front of you. and we can see all of the benefits that it has. I wish everybody was able to see for themselves what it means and the atmosphere it creates. Deputy Mayor Thériault, you have the floor. Please press your button. Thank you, Your Worship. And thanks to our presenters. We've always known that the Aberdeen Center is able to provide amazing programs for elders and other citizens. I was listening to you, Chantal, and all of the artists who were active in the 90s are old elder people now, and they might be interested in joining those activities. I know Chantal and her group, and I can tell you that our elders are in very good hands. I also like the idea that, as you mentioned, people my age can be brought together with younger people. I think it's very important, cannot be understated. There's adults, there's children, and sometimes it's hard to be able to stay in contact with our own family members. So I think having this opportunity at the center is very nice. So I know your activities are mostly focused on physical activity, but you also mentioned other aspects. And maybe my question is for the staff. Would it be possible to focus a little bit more on the theater that's nearby? We have the Aberdeen Center and the L'Escaouette Theater that's right next door. So wouldn't there be interesting opportunities in terms of partnerships, of cooperation, and joint projects between those two organizations? Well, for sure, that's something we're looking into. We had a suggestion from someone, and we told our elders about it to survey them a little bit about it to see if there was an interest. People like having a continuity of commitment. So if you create a text, are people going to come back? So in our movement classes, we have a therapeutic movement class. So we can include a singing element or reading element, or maybe a group of elders would be open to committing to creating activities or taking part in activities that are closer to theater or visual arts. We could have people painting or drawing. So we can blend in a whole lot of activities. There's a lot of ideas about that. We have a theater company nearby. So for sure, it creates a whole host of opportunities. There's no limits to what we can achieve. Well, thank you very much for mentioning the visual arts because I think it's very important as well. So I don't know where this is going to lead us because we're having thorough discussions about what we want to do in the future. But I think the idea, and I went there with Councillor Léger to meet with the people of the Aberdeen Center, and I think you're doing amazing things. But I'm wondering how we can make sure that this keeps happening in the future. Could we have a center that's specifically dedicated to elders and has links with the Aberdeen Cultural Center for specific programs? Anyways, the possibilities are endless, but we need to find a way um, that would be beneficial for elders. They want to have their own place, but to take them out of their comfort zone and bring them to other people, to a different environment, something that can be beneficial mentally, physically, etc.
Vous dirais que ça fait partie justement de la réflexion ce qui se passe en ce moment. Vous nous en
I
avez
would tell you that that is a part of what we're working on now. You have mentioned public participation. There's also been a proposal that has been submitted to the municipalities. So within the next few weeks, we will be able to get back to you with that answer. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Restez ici, s'il vous plaît. Robert, it's your turn. Can you just press the button there? Yeah. Okay, you're good.
It's green. Thank you for inviting me. The Royal Canadian Legion has participated with the City of Moncton and with the seniors because the seniors asked me all kinds of questions in late 23, early 24. 2024 was very successful as far as having lots of exercises for seniors. I made a complete report to Helen.
We've seen it all.
You've seen it all.
Yep.
Good. Nobody has to be a member of the Legion, and there's never a cost or a charge to any seniors coming into our Legion. Except for one, the senior social. It's $2, and thanks to the exercise program, we've doubled where we have people coming in on crutches, wheelchairs that can sit, listen to music, and they pay $2. It covers the cost of food. But that is a positive thing. We've gone from 345 attending 2024, and moving into 2025, we're at 438. Wow. So added is, I would care to say, is probably the seniors that came back from Ontario. They asked if they could have play cards on Wednesday night where the others are playing cards. We have 2 big rooms, and I said yes. So we have euchre for one room is euchre, one room is crib, and they're having a great time. A copy of the schedule is provided. Our Legion is probably booked for 90% of seniors 7 days a week now. Also, the seniors that have attended and have approached the Legion because they knew we do a lot of community service, such as with cadets, with all the schools, 21 schools. We do homeless veterans, and we also do homeless people. And we have, we take care of 16 low rental apartments. Having said that, some have decided to volunteer because they want to help in the community, which is a plus. So in 2025, on Monday, from 9 o'clock till 10:30 is senior exercise class. That is open to whoever wants to have it. At 10:30 to noon is senior exercise classes. On Tuesday at 9 o'clock till 10:30 is a new class, seniors beginners exercise class, which will start supposedly tomorrow morning. At 11 o'clock till noon is the senior exercise class. And from from 6 to 9, the seniors line dancing. There's 3 separate classes. They each for about an hour. If you don't make it into the first class, you work the second class. So we're in one room going into another room. On Wednesday, senior exercise class is open for the morning. We have a seniors exercise class from 10:30 to 12. From 12 till noon is senior line dancing. From 1 p.m. is seniors card 200. They come in and spend the afternoon playing cards. In the evening, we have 2 groups now. One, they play crib, and the other group, they're usually around 25 to 30, but it depends when the checks come in. On Thursday, we have seniors beginning classes and seniors exercise class. If there's a holiday or something happens, Friday will replace whatever's missed. So quite often we have a stat holiday on Monday, they come in on Friday. On Thursday, one Thursday a month, we have the Veterans Unit, usually around 20 to 25 in wheelchairs that come over with some of their family, and we give them a meal. And the ladies' exercise class said, we'll go to Friday, which is a plus. So basically, that's what we're doing. That's what's scheduled. Also available, we have pool, we have shuffleboard, we have senior social, we have darts. That doesn't involve paying anything. You come in and you tell me you want to play. The only cost that I found anywheres within the Legion on seniors is they all chip in to have a Christmas party, and they all chip in to have something Valentine's, and we decorate for them. And whenever they have that, there's no charge for them to come in and have a good time. So not a lot of change, except it's more popular, and I'm open for questions.
Terrific, thank you. Councillor Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci, Monsieur Dupuis. Français, en...
Thank you very much, Mr. Dupuis, and thank you, Mayor.
Deuxième question, c'est vous avez
I
identifié
have two questions to ask you. So number one, you identified a shortfall between the $7,000 that it's costing you and what is given to you by the city. Well, rather, it's the citizens of Moncton who give the money to us and then we give to you, of course. So does it cost you 84,000? Is that what I've understood? We have hired a full-time employee for support of seniors who arrives every morning and takes care of the cleaning and also setting up equipment.
Pour faire ça,
We must make space for the equipment.
5,000 piastres par mois, c'était comparé.
All of the details that I mentioned when I was speaking about the 7,000 per month
Travail, c'est 5 jours.
is affiliated with that. So it's for a full-time employee
Je comprends ça, mais vous
and the days per week that they work. Yes, we understood that. You also sent in a document which I was able to review. So are you referring to the 84,000? Or are you referring to the 77,000? So the 77,000, that was in reference to last year. So that was the approximate price that it cost us.
une période de réflexion.
Very well. So as Councillor Thériault said, we have been giving thought to this for a year. And the decision we want to make is, do we want a single center or do we want activities spread out around the city? So we are asking ourselves those questions about this investment, and we have not come to a conclusion at this stage. But I'm pleased to hear you say that the 77,000 should be sufficient for this year, but we will continue discussions with you in the future to find out what the council should do regarding all activities for seniors throughout the community. So I do thank you in advance for your patience, but please stay tuned. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for your presentation, Bob, especially from the Legion. One of the things that people have asked me, and I know the answer, but I thought maybe you could give it, is that to go to the Legion, you don't have to be a member. You don't have to buy a membership. Is that correct?
You don't have to buy a membership. We have some pool teams and some of the crib players, if they want to compete provincially and nationally with the throughout the Legions, they have to be a member in order to play as members. I would say that probably 75% of all our activities are non-members.
Yes.
Though we do have a large membership of 400 and some members of our Legion, but a lot of them is because their family had veterans in the family. They want to be a member of the family, of our Legion.
But also too, is that there is a large population in Moncton that have family related or soldiers or veterans themselves, right?
Well, the veterans themselves, if you look across Canada, the per capita for veterans within the provinces, Nova Scotia is #1 and province of New Brunswick is #2. Doesn't mean we have the more, but per capita, we're the second highest in Canada for family members.
And the other thing that it's with you, with the Legion, and I've been up there a number of times, is that the parking is terrific too. It's a flat parking lot.
It's,
wheelchair
we
accessible.
have, everything is one level. Your wheelchairs can go from the parking lot to the main floor, to the bathrooms. We had disability bathrooms. They're cleaned daily every morning at 7 o'clock. Caretakers in there cleans, they're cleaned daily. If any of the seniors need assistance, there's somebody there to help them. We have a video monitoring of all the rooms in our Legion and outside for their protection. Some of the comments said, we feel safe going there, and we're not far from other places we can go to.
Yeah, and that was my next question, is that geographically, it's very close to, I know a lot of the seniors go and play pickleball.
Yep.
And also they go to the Y for swimming, so
Yes.
it's all in pretty well walking distance, especially from the Y and from Curl Moncton. Do you know if many use all three?
I've heard comments, but I don't have figures of who
Yeah.
use all three.
Yeah, no, I've heard the same thing, yeah. And the other thing that you spoke about that I like, because whenever I talk to seniors, one of the things that they want to do is have a place to just go sit, have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a sandwich, maybe play some cards. So we do have that for them at the Legion.
I have tea, coffee, and water. Mind you, most of the people that do exercises have only asked for water. It's available, they don't have to buy it.
Mhm.
There's a big fridge in that main room. Grab one. It's there available to them, and that was part of my presentation.
Yeah.
The other thing is that once a month or so, the exercise classes get together and they decide to have a little luncheon after. And the ladies auxiliary don't charge very much, stay over and they talk over things and discuss where they're going next, and it's positive. I've had a lot of good positive from the ones that are attending, are happy to be there, and I guess the most complaints I've had is, I hope we don't have to leave.
Yeah, and I guess there's a pretty good crew that like to go dancing in the afternoon, so any of us that are seniors, if you want to go dancing. It's the afternoon.
You're all invited to come and have a look what goes on Sunday afternoon, and you wonder how come they're so active.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Legier.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I just wanted to try to clarify then, in my mind, so you're indicating that to run the program the way you're running it is costing you $84,000?
It pretty well costs about $7,000 a month is what I'm doing.
Okay, and so we haven't given you enough then to be able to run the program if you're running a loss. I mean, the whole goal was to give you the amount of money needed to be able to at least in my mind, would be neutral. So is it something we should consider, giving you the additional $6,000 or $7,000?
It would be something to consider, yes.
Okay.
As you know, we're a nonprofit.
Right.
We don't show profit. We try to keep above board. We've managed to do that. We're probably one of the only legions that are quite active for seniors 7 days a week.
So if we did that, let's say that we gave you the additional 7, are there, perhaps could you work with staff? There may be programs available through other levels of government to help with obtaining funding or partial funding, for example, for the employee that you have, and so I guess what I'm saying is we could give you the additional, well, depending on what council wants to do, the additional $7,000 so that you're neutral, but also working with staff to see, what options are available in terms of the, of that, of trying to obtain those funds. And that would help you on a more long-term basis as well.
My agenda is to meet up with the new provincial government representative. Claire Johnson is in our area. I haven't gone there yet.
Okay.
And it's the Legion is in her riding, and see what's available.
Okay.
I know that I have a parking lot that we patched it and patched it and patched it, and we have to do something one of these days.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I know we separated the questions. Can I ask dans encore une question?
Oh, oui, bien sûr. Oui.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. That's encore. In your situation,
Comme événement et disons, tout
the events that you make available and all of your classes and so forth, for all of that, when we give you the $7,000 grant, does that allow you,
ça satisfait vos besoins.
Oui.
does that meet your needs? Yes, that works for us. I believe so. Chantal would better be able to answer perhaps, but we propose activities based on what we can propose. So we did add the chair yoga class, but we decided that we would have fewer activities and classes that we would have to pay someone for, say on a Tuesday. So we made sure that we were within the budget that we had tabled. That's about it. We also reorganized things slightly. As I was saying earlier, management of people registering.
On peut y arriver tant qu'on
We made adjustments in that respect.
avoir une entente avec le centre.
We're also considering possibly having an agreement with the cultural center if they are interested. And in that way, we would be able to give 1 or 2 classes per week. And that is in a rental space, including maintenance. So if that were to go forward, we might need more funding, but for the moment, things are going very well.
Notre subvention va
Many of our grants are used to pay the instructors because these are all movement professionals who are instructing these classes. Also, we have a registered massage therapist, Vanessa, and dance instructor. She is a certified dance instructor. And so the funds are used to pay these professionals. So
ça donne un coup de main.
this will help you in the future to continue working with these professionals. Yes, the funding also lets us know what we'll be able to offer in the future. We also organize a festival. And so all of the funding does help the company to stay alive. And I am doing succession planning right now. I want to pave the way for the young people who will be taking over to replace Chantal. So I am heading in that direction, and cooperation from partners is essential so that the pie is a full pie for everyone involved. Thank you very much.
Juste une note pour le public.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to raise a point for Jason Moncton for the public. So that survey is ending on February 10th. And you can fill out a form at Moncton Library. There will also be in-person sittings that ended on Friday. People can also send an email to jason@moncton.ca or let's chat at moncton.ca. Thank you, Councillor Bourgeois. I move the recommendation. Excellent.
Questions? Councillor Legier.
Well, I'm just wondering if we could make that adjustment, and I guess I'd maybe propose that we increase it from 77 to 84 to at least bring it in line with their expenses for this year, and then allow staff to work with them. So I'd probably make an amendment to raise the amount from 77,000 for the Legion to the 84,000.
Could it be a friendly amendment? Do the mover and seconder agree? So that it's fully compensated for the full year. I'm just asking, if it's a big debate, we can go to the,
Well, when I asked my question earlier to both about funding, if they can make arrangements, I also told Monsieur Dupuis that stay tuned, because we're in the middle of thinking about this. Maybe it'll take a month or 2 months, but then we'll have a full picture, and I have no concerns about increasing it, but we're doing it blindly. And I think we should wait for the full picture. So
okay.
my concerns.
Councillor Richard, did you want to continue to keep that amendment on the
I
floor?
guess the proposal is funding for the year. It's not a proposal for next couple of months. So I know that we're going to revisit it. I mean, hang on. The funds we paid, a second here. Is that not funding for the whole year?
Monica, can you
And so if it's
provide some
funding,
clarity? Like what was your thought
not
in
going-
this?
yeah, because we're not going to have, regardless of what the decision is on the St. George Boulevard, that's not going to be helpful to anything until the end of the year. So I thought the understanding was we would give some assurance of this funding for the whole year, and then we can make adjustments, but I guess that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. It was meant for, we knew that going into 2025, we have a bit of research and things that we want to work on. We wanted to make sure that we weren't waiting and not providing services for seniors. So really, this was really to cover the 2025 gap that we would still have. Honestly, if we take away the two groups out of the equation, we would have a gap in recreation for seniors. So we didn't want that to happen for 2025. So it was a little bit of a, let's continue for 2025 until we figure out what we're gonna do. Because regardless of what, even though some of the steps might be implemented in 2025, it's gonna take time regardless of the decision made, right?
So with that, I mean,
So with that,
I would move the amendment that we
okay, is there a
increase
second?
it to 84,000.
Councillor Steves. I'm just curious, Monica, like why would you not have put it in if it was for the full year? I'm just out of curiosity because it is clearly denoted in the CRF that it's only for 11 months really for their costs.
It was a motion made at budget. I really
okay.
didn't.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough.
Sorry.
Fair enough. I'd forgotten that little bit. Okay. So the amendment has been moved and seconded.
And in a sense, the amendment then gives another month.
Yeah, basically for the entire year.
Full year.
Okay. So the amendment has been moved and seconded. Councillor Richard.
So can I hear the amendment? What,
The amendment is just to add up to a total of $84,000 so that they have full funding for the entire year for the Legion. That's the only change at this time.
thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I guess when it was at budget, when I made the motion regards to this, and it was, at the time, we talked about waiting to get what we were gonna, the numbers we were getting back from the Legion anyway. It wasn't, we didn't have the exact numbers at the time, so what we did was we tried to figure out what we give them last year that would hold them to at least October, November. So it was always in the budget that we would give them that extra anyway. So
Okay.
it's no,
Awesome.
anyway, thanks.
So on the amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Oh, darn. Okay. So the amendment has been moved and seconded. So, okay. Sorry, old habits die hard. Can we go to the original? okay, we'll go through this whole tedious process. Oh, I need a mover. Don't touch anything yet. Who moved the original motion? Council.
No, sorry, Bourgeois and Richard.
Richard. Okay. Councillor Bourgeois, could you please move this? Councillor Richard, second it. I don't think we have any mechanism for amendments, though. We do? Oh, okay. Sorry, we have a new system. Don't touch anything. Okay, so we have a mover and seconder for the amendment. So we need to vote on the amendment, and we will not be doing that online.
We can do it online, but just the vote. It'll just be the vote that.
So we
do
can
online.
vote on the amendment. Okay, so
Yes.
we did that, and it was unanimous? Yes. Why don't we just go now to the page to vote on the actual motion? The actual motion now. Okay, please indicate on your screen,
Which is 80.
which is 84,000 by the passing of the amendment.
There you go.
And the motion passes unanimously, but I only saw 10 votes. There are 11. Oh, Councillor Crossman is not here. Okay, then. Okay. I believe it's been moved past and everything is done now. Thank you very much. Thank you for both groups for stepping up and serving our senior community, and especially with your creativity to problem solve. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on.
Yes. The next item is Westmoreland Sidewalk and Streetscape. And here to discuss this is Renee Lagacé.
Oh, sorry. You need to press the button. There you go.
Good afternoon, City Council. My first item today is regarding Westmoreland Street. As part of the 2025 Capital Works budget deliberations, City Council approved the project, which would involve the street reconstruction of Westmoreland Street between Assumption Boulevard and Main Street. So the project will involve raising the street to proper elevation, providing some sewer renewals, sewer separation, and also a full reconstruction of the street. And if you recall, a few years prior to the 2025 Capital Works deliberations, this project was actually approved under the IBA fund, so the Integrated Bilateral Agreement between the federal government, the provincial government, and the municipal government. So in essence, we are paying 27% of the total cost of this project. Now, we could talk about water and sewer pipe renewal all day if you wish, but we thought that council would be more interested in the aesthetic aspect of the project. So we're really here to discuss the surfacing work. In essence, what we're trying to do here is get a final decision on what the street will look like. So we had a landscape architect come up with 3 options. The first option that you're seeing on your screen would be a concrete sidewalk. The travel lanes would remain asphalted, and there would be an amenity strip between the asphalt and the concrete that would be made of paver stones that would have, potentially some planters, benches, and just to kind of bring an aesthetic element to the street. And those paver stones that you see between the sidewalk and the street would be similar in nature to what we have today on Downing Street. So that is option number 1. Option number 2 essentially is the entire the entire sidewalk area would become paver streets. So again, the travel lanes would remain asphalt, but then all the pedestrian area would be paver stones, again, similar to what we have on Downing Street. So this is option number 2. And option number 3, as you can see on your screen, is the entire surface would become paver stones, similar to the stones that are on Downing Street. So the travel lanes for the vehicles would be paver stones as well. This is just another angle closer to, you'll probably recognize the provincial building to the right-hand side there. So we're closer to Assumption Boulevard. Just another look at option number 1. Again, concrete for the asphalt. Concrete for the sidewalk, asphalt for the street, and an amenity strip of paver stones. Option number 2, again, the entire sidewalk area made of paver stones. And option number 3, the entire street would become paver stone. So we had a lot of discussion internally, and we wanted to come here and obviously, propose one of these options. We have some concern with option number 3 that you're seeing on your screen here. I guess the first concern is that the intent with Westmoreland Street would always to be remain open to travel vehicles. In the event that we are closing, as you know, we close down street a lot for our events. The intent would also be to close the proposed east-west street that would be behind the Assumption building in the future. But the intent was always to keep Westmoreland open to through traffic for detour purposes. The other concern is that if you think about Westmoreland Street, the corridor, like the adjacent properties are not built to their full potential. There's a lot of parking lots. There's talks about potentially a redevelopment on the market site. So on a street like this, if we see redevelopment, it means we'll have to cut into these paver stones when we install water and sewer services and things like that for future development. It's not to say that this could not happen in the future, but we think timing-wise that it's not the proper timing to have this option. And if we can go back, maybe go back to option 1. Yep, that's perfect. Thank you. With option 1, that's a viable option, but we think probably we can do a bit better as far as the integration with the proposed east-west street. And that's the reason why we are proposing option 2 today. We think it's a good balance between the cost and the aesthetic value. And also, we think it's the best fit for the corridor, the function of Westmoreland Street as it was intended to be. You'll notice in the council rec form that we also did mention Main Street as being something we want to look into. I think it goes without saying that the red brick that we're using on Main Street is not performing to the level that we expect it to be. It has a really, really short useful service life. So we'd like to come back to council with some streetscape design for Main Street in the near future. But again, back to Westmoreland as the focus. The recommendation here in front of you is for council to adopt option number 2, which is on your screen. And I am definitely open for questions.
Thank you. First up, I have Councillor Leger. Do you wish to move the recommendation? Then I have Councillor Richard. Did you wish to second it? Okay, so we could go to that page, please. Thank you. All right, back to you, Councillor Leger.
Yeah, thanks. It looks okay. I think what would be nice, though, is would there be any traffic calming features then, like elevated crossings and stuff, if you're going to make this because you really want it to be that connection, right? And it's going to remain open all the time, you were saying. So can those things be placed? I do prefer the stone look because it's more calming, right? And it slows cars down. However, if we're going to be cutting it up because of development, then that's not very, strategic. So could you put in some traffic calming that would make it such that people can't speed? They just, but yet it's attractive enough with the sidewalk and the vegetation that it will be planted, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question, Councillor Leger. It's something that we could look into. However, it wasn't planned in the original concept. When it comes to traffic calming or just the design of the street itself, one thing to consider is that the street is quite narrow to begin with. The entire street right-of-way is quite narrow. The travel lanes will be narrow. The fact that the sidewalk area would be paver stone, kind of have that traffic calming effect to begin with. It's also somewhat of a short block, so we don't expect that by design and by nature, we'd see some high speeds there. We're not seeing them now. So we could definitely look at it. It probably would not qualify, if I had a guess, it would not qualify if we look at our traffic calming policy today. But again, something we can look at. And maybe there's other softer measures that we can put in place just to deter people from speeding.
Yeah, especially the one in front of the market, because people cross the street, you know, and so it become, anyway, just, anyway, something to think about. And will the granite curbs be part of that design?
Engineering is actually recommending to move away from the granite curb that we're seeing on Main Street. A few reasons. We don't think it's a good cost benefit. You look at granite curb, it would be probably 3-4 times the cost of concrete. And most of that material is buried underground. We're only kind of seeing the edge of it that's kind of sticking out. And also it doesn't provide the same quality of drainage that we see for concrete curb. What happens with the granite slabs or the granite curb is that they're all sections, and if they tend to settle over time, so then it doesn't provide the proper drainage. As for concrete, which is kind of poured in place with a curb machine, then you really get that good grading in your gutters and a formed gutter as well.
The only thing though is over time, the plows beat them and break them and chip them, and unless we're redoing a street, they just remain like that, and they remain chipped, and they look horrible compared to other cities that have granite. And granite doesn't seem to. I'm not very familiar with granite that is uneven, but probably maybe that does occur. Mm-hmm. But I am very familiar with the fact that the granite doesn't go anywhere. It's probably, maybe there's a cost to the equipment. I don't know if that's something to consider, that it's maybe more difficult on the equipment, but just the concrete is, to me, it over a couple of years will look horrible. And so what would be the plan? Would we be maintaining that, or is it just we do it once and then we have to put up with chipped curbs and so on?
Yeah, as far as concrete curb, we're not seeing the deterioration right away, like we, you know, and maybe Alexandre can attest to that, but our plow operators are, you know, instructed to just kind of set back a bit from the curbs. They do get chipped, of course. You know, we're a municipality that's got to live with winter and all its impact. Mm-hmm. Yes, they get chipped, but I think that's just kind of the cost of doing business. If they get chipped to a point where they're broken off, there's material out there that can be applied for patching that curb up. And it gets to a point where it's so bad that we need to replace it. But on a brand new street, we're rarely there within 10 to 20 years to replace curb when we do a full reconstruction project.
I'm just wondering the long-term analysis of it, even though it's 4 times more expensive, will it be in the long run cheaper for us to do it that way versus and aesthetically what it can look like in terms of its resilience? It would be nice to have that comparison. So
we would, for that comparison, we would definitely have the cost aspect of it. We can have some data on that. As far as the long-term maintenance, that's a bit of a stretch to get that data. It would be kind of really difficult, to be honest with you, to put some numbers to that.
But we have Main Street that has it now, right?
Correct.
And so, I mean, how long have those been there, and how long, and take a look at their condition? And we've reconstructed that street a few times, I think, because I seems to remember we had some asphalt thing done and stuff. So anyway, just think about that. I mean, from an optics perspective, visually, it remains shiny or longer. Thank you, though. I appreciate the you know, showing us this, and yeah, I think it's good. Thank you.
Councillor Richard.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Thanks for the presentation, René.
Thank you, Your Worship.
What you're talking about, the paver stone sidewalk, is not anything close to what we have on Main Street now. And I mean, the first thing that I'm thinking of is people in wheelchairs. Mm-hmm. Like, they're doing some off-road riding there when they're on Main. So I really hope that it's not going to be something similar to what we have there.
Yeah, thank you for your concern, Councillor Richard. So the paver stones that are proposed here on Westmoreland would be similar to what you see on Downing Street today. So it's a different type of paver stone, more durable. And again, we want to bring some of that concept to Main Street as we're looking at renewing sections of Main Street sidewalk as well in the future. That will be like for another discussion for another day, but
It would all match up.
yes, it would, yes.
Have you ever thought of stamped concrete?
Thank you for the question. That's a great question. What we've experienced with stamped concrete, it's limited here in the city, but also in discussions with other municipalities, is that when you stamp concrete, you're actually putting pressure on the surface. And concrete is made up essentially of gravels, cement, and water. And as you're pushing your stamp on the surface of your concrete, your gravels actually kind of migrate to the bottom, which leaves that surface more like vulnerable because it doesn't have the granular structure to it. All that to say that with the products that we have to apply in the winter, salt, sand, it chips away more easily at that surface. So we're seeing with stamped concrete, what we're seeing in our climate is faster degradation of the surface. As opposed to a paver stone where there's no, once you bring it to the site, there's no alteration to the material. It's placed there and it's made to withstand our climate. So that's our concern with stamped concrete as far as applying it in our climate.
Okay, so and on the street that we already have it on, we don't have any issues so far. I mean, it's been there for a number of years already.
The stamped concrete we use as a trial.
Sorry, not the paver stones that we have already.
Downing?
Downing.
Yes. So on Downing Street, I think this project is now over 12 years. I'm just guessing here. It's got to be 10 plus years. Essentially what you're seeing as degradation is really from our snow clearing event. As far as the material itself goes, we didn't see any natural degradation of the surface. You do see some scratches on it, definitely from the snow clearing operations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Thériault.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Merci beaucoup, René.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, René, for your excellent presentation. You mentioned that you are concerned with the aesthetics of it. So how many trees are we going to plant? Thank you, Councillor Thériault, because the road is very narrow and city land is very narrow on this street. And traffic lanes are also very narrow, so we are very limited in terms of space for planting trees and for the sidewalk. So in consultation with the parks team, we determined a certain minimum amount of space for trees to be able to thrive. So we have what we call tree cells that go under the sidewalk that helps provide water for the trees, because we know it's going to be very hard to have trees flourish with limited space and limited water. So there's several locations on Westmoreland Street where there's a bit more space where we can probably plant trees, but we do not have a set number of trees that we want to plant on Westmoreland Street because we need to take into account those limitations. I think it is absolutely essential to have trees. It's important for people's health. So, and also in the summer, we can't walk outside in Moncton because summers are too hot and it's getting even worse year after year. So I think trees are something we need to keep in mind. We need to make sure that trees are planted. I see a lot of cities, such as Portland, Maine, for example, because we talk a lot about the different products that you use, such as for sidewalks and stuff. But in Quebec City, what do they do? Because they have the same climate as us. So what do they do elsewhere? How do they make sure that trees can thrive, in an urban environment?
Je m'excuse, je connais pas trop les produits. là.
I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar with all the products that are used.
S'il y a d'autres produits.
We can for sure always look at what other cities do to draw some lessons. And the device that I mentioned earlier, the tree cells, can be placed under the sidewalk for the water to be able to get in the soil for the trees to thrive. But as I said, the challenge on Westmoreland Street is the lack of space. For a tree to thrive, we need a certain amount of space, but in this case, we're very limited because of the constraints that we have for the traffic lanes on the one hand and the sidewalk on the other. So we are very limited, and we are already on the minimum side of requirements for the sidewalk. We can't plant a tree in the middle of the sidewalk. So what the architect suggested, if you go back, if you refer back to the slides, you'll see that in some places,
Puis les municipalités utilisent beaucoup ça dans des endroits où justement.
tall grass is to be planted, and typically cities use those when they lack space, when there's not enough space for trees to be planted. So it allows us to achieve the result of having some greenery without planting trees. I'd like to refer back to my colleague's question about traffic calming devices. I think we need to find new ideas, innovative solutions to slow down traffic. We often complain that we have too many cars in the downtown. And I think in Portland, Maine, the city is about the same size as Moncton. But in their downtown, they found ways of reducing traffic, of incentivizing public transit. I don't know. I think we need to, I don't know how to put it, but we want everything to be perfect. But I think we need to look around and see what's done elsewhere. And even in Paris, sidewalks are not perfect. So I think we shouldn't always strive to have perfect sidewalks, but I think you should focus rather on what's recycled, what's old, what's. It's just a suggestion I had. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's actually in regards to Conseiller Richard's earlier question. I just wanted to add a bit of information, what René was saying in regards to Downing, so that the pavers will be similar, so a bit larger, more durable. And also on Downing, there is a concrete slab underneath the pavers, and we do intend to design these sidewalks also including a concrete slab underneath, which means that there's less chance of heaving in the bricks ranging in height. So I just wanted to add that information.
And I just looked online and it was 2016, June of 2016, when Downey, you were almost right on. Is there anyone who's not spoken on this topic who wishes to speak? I'll go back to you, Councillor Leger.
Just quickly, so although these look really nice, do we have feedback from ability organizations who, have memberships in wheelchairs and have difficulty walking and so on, to get their opinion on what this should look like? I know we often get complaints about our sidewalks from people in wheelchairs related to, maneuverability and snow clearing and so on. So maybe I missed it, but are they at the table that say, yes, this is what they want? And so, or...
That's a great question, Conseiller Leger, and if it's not already been done, we can reach out to the Accessibility Committee, which, works in tandem with the City of Moncton on these issues, and definitely echo the concerns on the red brick Main Street layout.
And it would be interesting to get their feedback on what they thought of Downing since 2016. Because I don't get any negative feedback, really, truly, but I don't know. I mean, but perhaps someone in a wheelchair might see things differently, or someone with a cane. I know that I often get the comment, although, maybe there's less and less high heels or a different type of footwear, but, you know, I hear often that, you know, people lose their heels and so on in our sidewalks, and they might look pretty on Main Street, but they're not very functional, and they're uneven.
Yes.
And so that's the nice thing about Downing is it did what we were promised in 2016, which was that if we went with that surface with the concrete, that everything would stay stable, and it seems to have done that. So I was hoping that if it's okay with under the ability umbrella, that, you know what, these are acceptable, that could be what we move towards when we redo Main Street. And then hopefully we keep the curb to the granite curb.
What I would propose is when we bring the discussion back to council for the Main Street streetscape, that we have that discussion beforehand with the accessibility committee and bring all the comments back to council.
And lastly, a real good communication to residents of what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, and then the comparison to Downing, because otherwise people are going to say, well, why are you putting bricks again? They're all broken up, they heave, but we're not doing the same thing anymore. But visually, you wouldn't necessarily know the dynamics behind the construction itself. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Oui. Donc, l'asphalte, ça
Thank you. So asphalt creates heat islands in the summer. So since no trees are going to be planted, there's not going to be a lot of greenery. Could we have rocks or things like that instead of concrete? Because I think, Madam, that I heard you say that there was a concern with reducing heat in the summer. That's an excellent question, Councillor LeBlanc. There might be a slight difference between asphalt and concrete or even paver stone, such as proposed, in terms of absorbing heat. But I don't think it should be the #1 factor in making that determination. Our decision was focused on two things. First, the fact that Westmoreland Street has to be open to traffic, and also because the corridor and the adjoining properties are not fully developed. So that's something that needs to be considered, but I don't think there's a big difference in terms of heat absorption between the two different types of material. But whether it be concrete or asphalt, for sure, grass is better, or more natural elements have more of an impact. So creating shade would be the most impactful approach, for sure. We are expecting the Westmoreland corridor to be developed, and we are hoping once the buildings are created that shade will be more present in the summer. So maybe when the time comes to developing those properties, those adjoining properties in the Westmoreland corridor, maybe we need to take that factor into consideration, namely creating more shade, because the city is very limited on the side of the road.
I don't see any other questions. I think we can move to the vote. And I think that's it for who we have here. 9 votes, passes unanimously. Thank you.
The next item is.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
He's not moving.
Actually, drink of water if I could.
Okay.
No water for you.
The next item, when Renee comes back, is traffic calming update.
Welcome back.
All right. Well, if it didn't show, I was excited for the first item, but I'm even more excited about this second item, which is to provide you an update on our traffic calming policy and program. I'd just like to acknowledge the great work that staff's been doing. John Nason is here. He's been doing a lot of the data collection in the background. Jose Vautour, who's been doing over 100 analysis when it comes to traffic calming, and Radia for her leadership and always her expertise in traffic calming. It's much appreciated. So thank you, team. Presentation in three parts. We'd like to talk about the results from our 2024 traffic calming program, which was really our pilot year. It was the first year we did some true measures. We want to propose to you or show you what we're planning for 2025 when it comes to the traffic calming program. And we also are proposing some changes to the policy, and that is just us going through the motion and doing all these analysis. We kind of find few things that we'd like to tweak in the policy. So just a summary of what happened in 2024, we had some traffic measures on Ryan Road, Twin Oaks, Lonsdale, Purdy, and Pleasant Avenue. And we also had some crosswalk treatment, and I'm seeing they're not showing on this map. Sorry? Tap on the screen? Oh, look at that. Thank you. A few crosswalk treatments on St. George and Shediac Road. Nope. There you go. Perfect. So some of the pictures of what these look like, we have our speed cushions that were installed on a few of these streets on the top left corner. To the right, top right, we have a raised crosswalk. We had a few of those on Twin Oaks and one in Ryan. Bottom left, we had one raised intersection installed on Purdy Avenue. And the bottom right corner shows the crosswalk treatments, which is essentially some ballers that are installed that are installed 3 seasons and then removed in the winter, and kind of provides that kind of choking effect, the lane narrowing effect. Some of the feedback, again, this was our first year doing it, so we haven't had a lot of really storm events, snowstorm events to really test them out. So we haven't had any positive or negative feedback from our operations crew so far. We did, however, notice that there's already some wear and tear on the deflectors or the vertical speed humps or speed cushions, and also some deterioration on the pavement markings that are not even a year old. And that's expected when you have plows trying to clear snow and they have, around these speed cushions or speed bumps. Definitely some great feedback as well from our emergency services. We want to make sure in the future that we do not install speed humps or speed bumps close to intersections, because if a fire truck is turning, if the fire truck hits it on an angle, that could be quite dangerous. So we had that feedback that we want to make sure they're kind of offset a certain distance from the intersections. We want to make sure we have proper spacing between the bollards. Like this goes back to active transportation, but if you think about the ballers that are installed along Killam Drive, we want to make sure they're spaced well enough for people that can pull over if they have to, let's say there's an emergency and they have to get out of the travel lane. And we also want to make sure that the slopes on our vertical deflectors, so our speed humps or speed cushions, are the right slopes. If they're too steep, it provides a safety concern. If they're not steep enough, then it's not serving its function as a traffic calming measure. Just some of the pictures. So you'll see the speed cushion on the top left side, and after a few passes, you already see some scratches on the bottom left there. That's the same location. So again, that's to be expected. We'll see some scratches. We'll see some deterioration on the asphalt a bit, and also on the pavement markings. Really excited to talk about the results. We did some speed studies before these measures were installed and after the measures were installed. So what you're seeing on your screen there is the green bars is the speeds prior to, and orange the speed after. What you're looking at here is the 85th percentile speed, which means that 85% of the vehicles are traveling at that speed or lower. You can think about it as the average speed. And so if you look at Purdy, Pleasant, and Lonsdale, we're looking at about a 10 kilometer an hour reduction in that 85 percentile speed, which for us it's a success. You look at those 3 streets, and 85% of the drivers are driving below 50 kilometers an hour, which is the posted speed. Again, 85% are driving below that posted speed, which is great, phenomenal, really, when you think about it. Twin Oaks, we didn't see the same impact, the same level of impact. We think because Twin Oaks is quite a long stretch, and so these measures were spaced out compared to Pleasant, Purdy, and Lonsdale. So we think that may have had an impact on not seeing that, that drastic results in reduction of speed. Moving on to the proposed 2025 capital program, this is where we all get excited, where we're proposing to do some traffic calming measures. We have Rennick Road, section of Bessborough Avenue, Church Street, section of Drummond Street, section of Erin Vale, and Camelot Drive. So kind of stretch around the city. And again, just a reminder, these are based on data, a warrant system that was approved by council, a policy that was approved by council, and so it's kind of putting science behind our decision making. We're also proposing a lot more of these crosswalk treatment measures mainly on busy arterial roads. So we want to add 3 on Salisbury Road, add a couple more on Shediac to the ones that are already there, one on Millennium Boulevard, and also another one on St. George to complement the ones that are already there. So what you could expect to see next summer is a combination of measures, some that are similar that were installed last year, but you'll probably also see more of the traditional speed hump that you see on your picture, which is, again, traditional speed hump that doesn't have the brake in the middle, such as we do with the speed cushion. We like it because we think it's a great measure, and also it doesn't impact drainage. It doesn't go right up to the curb. It stays short of the curb, so you're not into putting some new catch basins. So that's what we figured. That's what one of the lessons learned is whenever we put a measure that affects drainage, the cost goes up, almost doubles. For instance, like a raised intersection where we have to put more drainage basins because we are impacting drainage. It definitely goes up. So we think we can stretch our budget more by using measures such as the speed humps or the speed cushions as well that do not impact drainage. And the last part is about the policy. So we have to admit we're becoming somewhat some experts in these. We've have over 100 street segments that were analyzed, and through the matrix, through the warrant analysis, we just found a few things that we think needs to be changed to adapt to our reality. I'm not going to go through all the minor changes in the policy. Those are attached in the council report form, but just want to highlight a few ones. First of all, obviously, when you think about traffic calming, one of the main decision criteria is speed. Average speeds were 85 percentile speed on your streets. And what we realize is that our current policy does not consider school zones. So as you know, there's certain school zones where a certain time of day, the traffic, the posted speed goes from 50 kilometers to 30 kilometers an hour. And again, our current policy doesn't allow for that. So we want to make sure this is captured because 45 kilometers an hour speed is great on a posted speed limit of 50, but 45 kilometers is not so great if you're in a school zone during those hours and you're supposed to go 30 or lower. So that's just one change we want to do. We also noticed something when it came to our busy roads, our arterial roads, such as Mountain Road and Shediac, because one of the decision criteria in our policy is traffic volume. Okay, so the higher traffic volume you have on the street, the higher you can score in the matrix. So obviously what we saw is all our St. George Boulevard of the world, our Mountain Road and Shediac would all score higher than the local streets because by nature they have a lot of traffic. So we made some adjustment in the policy just to make sure that like all the streets are kind of being on the same level playing field basically, because we know that the primary function of some of these roads, the busy roads, are to have higher traffic. So again, just to kind of tweak things so that the priority makes more sense for us. And the last one I wanted to talk about is the pedestrian generators. We have some points for streets that have a lot of pedestrian generators, such as schools or restaurants or community areas, things like that, commercial areas. But there wasn't any kind of rhyme and reason. It was basically a maximum point of 15. And so a lot of streets were getting that 15 points automatically. So what we're proposing here, and it's one of the biggest changes, I guess, in our policy, is come up with a little matrix that you see here on your table that looks at not only the type of pedestrian generator, but also how close it is to the street that's being analyzed. So you'll see here the top category schools. We have another category for other types of institutions such as daycare, and another category for all the other pedestrian generators. And again, you score more points depending on the category, but also you score more points if you're abutting the street within 250 meters of the street or within 500 meters of the street. Again, just putting a bit more science numbers to the warrant system. And again, that's all part of us crunching a lot of numbers, doing a lot of analysis, and really a sensitivity analysis at the end. And another change that we want to bring to the policy is we're analyzing a lot of streets that are, well, all the streets that are proposed for resurfacing or reconstruction in the future. If we're rebuilding a street and there's a speed cushion or speed hump to be put, now is the time to do it because of the cost saving. We already have a contractor on site and all of that good stuff. And so what we'd like to do is there's certain street, if you recall the policy, it's a point system, and to qualify, you have to meet 30 points. We ran into some situation where some streets were scoring like 28 or 29 points, and the street was up for renewal the following year. So in those situations, we made an engineering judgment that we'd want to add the traffic calming measures now in recognition for, well, a couple of things. One, we'll be there next year doing some work. So again, cost saving there. But also, when you look at the criteria, one of them being traffic, there's certain areas, certain street we're looking at that we know there's going to be growth. So we know in a couple of years from now, they're probably going to reach that level of traffic. So again, there's some engineering judgment that's happening there. And what we want to do is have a bit of flexibility when it comes to street that are due for renewal in our capital works projects. And so the recommendation that is in front of you is to adopt the proposed changes to the policy. And I am open to any questions.
Terrific. Thank you, Rennie. Councillor Kingston, did you wish to move this recommendation? Thank you. So you do?
Yes.
Wish to move it? Is there a seconder for it? Councillor Richard, I just ask that you go to the voting page and indicate that. Terrific. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Kingston.
Merci. Thank you, Danae. These are exciting changes for all of us who live in this great city. And I know the folks on Camelot are going to be pleased because they had a legitimate concern during construction season of the truck traffic speed and whatnot. You got Warner in there in Bavaria. It's quite an expanded section as it eventually will connect to Harrisville in the by the hotel. Is Church Street, and I can't see it on the map, are we talking Mountain Road down to the overpass? That's the quick section that's been identified, correct?
Correct, Councilor Kingston. This is from Mountain Road to the Wheeler overpass.
And the seasonal posts are just fantastic. I know how traffic really slowed down when they were put in because of fear of obviously hitting them, but it really made a difference on Shediac Road. I'm off Camelot, pardon me, I'm off of Macaulay. So that area is certainly laden with traffic, and great to see that earlier section coming up from McBuns to Scott Vista. So just fantastic work, and it's going to be a great 25. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. And I'd just like to add to that we did not have the data for the post and the pre and post speed for those specific crosswalk locations, but that is something we want to do as well to see how effective those specific locations are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. Thank you, Madame Mares.
Thank you. Councillor Edgett.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to know, based on the wonderful program that you've put in place here, I was wondering where Morton Avenue would sit in the plans for calming between University and McLaughlin.
Thank you for the question, Conseillère Edgett. That's something I will have to bring back to the team and see if if Morton's part of the 100 segments that we've done. You know, just knowing the street, there's probably some high speeds there already, and probably an area that that could benefit from some measures such as the crosswalk treatment measures.
Mhm.
So that's a good candidate to look at, and we can definitely come back to you via a separate email.
I think it would certainly apply where it's near an educational institution, for one. And I'm wondering how you actually get information on accidents. You mentioned that that's part of the factors, I think, if I understood correctly, that you use to determine this. How do you get that information? Is just by word of mouth or?
No, it's working in collaboration with our partners at the RCMP.
Okay.
So it's we've established how we get that data transferred to the city, what we're looking for information, and we've made some great progress there as well.
Okay. And so is that current information or does it go back several years?
What we do in the policy is look for 3 years. 3 years. So it's basically looking at 3 years of data. We also look at the type of collision, whether it's with a vulnerable user or not, and whether it was an injury or more serious.
I noticed you also in some of the requirements involved threats to pedestrians or whatever. I think I read that. I think there is a big danger on this street because there has been 2 major accidents there where both cases the cars flipped over the sidewalk, so they were actually upside down, destroying telephone poles and fences. So going right through the sidewalk area. So those, I think, are concerns that should be addressed with the program that you have. And because I don't think there's any infrastructure being planned for Morton Avenue per se.
No, you're
So
correct.
this would be an addition to, is that correct?
That's correct. We do have, I guess the next big plan for Morton Avenue is the active transportation component of it.
Okay.
That's being in the works through a different angle. But when you look at our decision criteria and the matrix, you look at speeds, traffic volume, pedestrian generators, U to M, right? So I'm fairly confident it would score quite high. So I'll go back to the team and kind of look where it sits and see what the next step is for Morton Avenue.
Just from going there quite regularly, I would imagine that the speeds are between 60 and 70.
I would not disagree with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci, René. Je dois m'excuser.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Renee. I beg your pardon because I did have a medical appointment and I missed a part of the meeting. So please forgive me if I bring something up that you have already covered. No problem. Do you have any national codes or standards, like the ones that we have, for example, for building codes and construction? Do you have one for traffic that can help you to make decisions? Yes? To answer your question, Councillor Bourgeois, when it comes to designing
L'ATC, ou en anglais le TAC, qu'on utilise souvent.
the TAC, the Transport Association of Canada, this is a document that's the best practices. It's not necessarily a Bible, but we do follow those standards or that guide, if you will. And when it comes to signage on streets and so forth. When it comes to traffic calming, the TAC does have recommendations. And we also look at what other municipalities are doing. So there is a certain flexibility when it comes to traffic calming, and it's really not one size fits all. You have to look at each section of street to figure out what works best. I can give you an example in my area, Harper Lane. There are electrical poles nearly right in the middle of the street. So we don't have a national code for something like that either. And again, there you have to adapt. So after a year of testing, do you think you will make new recommendations? Is it possible that there will be tweaks over the next year? Good question. That is possible. As I mentioned, we will review different sections or segments of streets. and might find things that we wish to change.
On va aboutir à un standard.
But we do hope that we will end up with a standard that we'll be very comfortable with. But again, it's inevitable that there will always be new situations that will arise in the future, and we will all adapt to that. I've also spoken to our engineering partners regarding certain streets where we need more flexibility for traffic calming measures. And that's another situation where we need flexibility. Yes, so that flexibility brings me to my next question. Certain streets, and I really like this third bubble where it mentions being flexible with speeds. It's not automatically a limit of 50 everywhere, but in certain zones, it can be 30 or 40 in school zones and so forth. So in your thinking process, have you considered streets that are used as shortcuts? So here I'm talking about certain streets that people tend to take to get from Boulevard A to Boulevard B, for example, where they would be more inclined not to respect the speed limits because this is a shortcut, so it's a quicker way for them to get from point A to point B. That's a good question. So in those cases, if there are speeding problems, that will be taken into account. That's a primary factor in our decision making. So we've been asked in the past to evaluate streets because citizens did consider that they were being used as shortcuts.
À ce niveau-là. Ben, nous autres, on veut vraiment se concentrer sur
And it can be tricky, but we did want to focus on the speed limits themselves. So if people are taking detours or shortcuts, as you say,
le réseau routier, puis c'est
we don't necessarily see it as a problem because it is still part of the street network. So I would imagine that in some cases you require the police's cooperation. You ask for information, sometimes they can send it to you. And so how do you go about approaching the police?
Pendant une semaine pour donner une bunch d'infos.
Do they sometimes concentrate on a certain street for a certain period of time? When it comes to speed limits, Councillor Bourgeois? Yes. So when it comes to speeding,
à la GRC.
we do send information to the RCMP and we do ask them or suggest to them because it is up to them if they're going to do an enforcement check. And then they may come back to us with data. And our data might be over 24 hours or over 3 or 4 days. And we'll look at that data and see if there is recurring speeding that is happening and if it might be at a certain hour of the morning, for example. When it comes to shortcuts and detours, we can also look at volume. So when we're looking at traffic calming, we can look at that for those streets. And we have been curious to see if people started to avoid streets after we had implemented our measures on those streets. But it turns out that it doesn't really cause people to avoid those streets. So there are two main things I'm hearing: speed and also people not stopping at stop signs. They instead come to a rolling stop, as we say, and that would be in residential neighborhoods. So I believe that the RCMP is well aware of those 2 points. So another question, when it comes to measuring the results, and this is a pilot project and you will adapt it as you go forward, and I imagine that what we're aiming for is reducing mortality rates. We don't want accidents where there are very harmful injuries. We don't want anyone to be driving over sidewalks. So do you measure the before and the after to be able to determine, for example, there has been a 22% decrease in accidents? Well, you'll see on one of the slides that we did have a diagram that shows speeds before our measures and after. This would be on Purdy, Lonsdale, Pleasant, and Twin Oaks. And we did observe a 10 km/h on average decrease on Lansdale and Purdy, which is a success because that decrease brought all of the travel speeds underneath the speed limit. On Twin Oaks, we didn't see that as much, and we attribute that to the fact that it is a long street. And then, of course, when it comes to accidents, these are also data that we have access to thanks to the RCMP. And we did see that the average speed was impacted by our measures. Yes, so when it comes to signage and your measures, that makes sense. But the ultimate goal is probably to decrease mortality rates. When it comes to cyclists, we can ask the same question. Are there fewer and fewer accidents, injuries, and fatalities? Can you give examples? Perhaps we can see a 10% decrease, but there are still fatalities, because if that's the case, perhaps we are treating the symptoms instead of the cause. So do you have data on cyclists? We do not. All of the statistics that we have access to are shared by the RCMP. However, we have been looking at data over 1 year, and I think that I would have heard of it if there had been any incident on one of the 3 streets where we had taken measures. So we can verify that. And I also would like to mention that there have been a lot of studies into linking up accidents and the consequences of the accidents. So if the speed limit is decreased by 10 kilometers, your chances of surviving a collision increase by X percentage, for example. So the general goal of all of that is that if you reduce speed limits, you also reduce the risk of accidents between pedestrians, cyclists, and motor vehicle operators. Yes, that's logical, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the final impact would be having fewer collisions or fewer fatalities. So I think that we need to make sure we're being logical in our measures to reach our ultimate goal. It seems to me that there's a chunk missing. So, for example, we decreased the speed limit and there were fewer negative repercussions. Yes, certainly. We can look again at the data, but as we do go ahead and more time passes since we have installed our measures, we can carry out more reliable comparisons between the before and after. Certainly. Okay, and I will end with a comment. So I have been keeping on to you ad nauseum regarding this. But citizens have the right to be concerned about these matters. I want to thank you for your work, knowing how difficult it is to balance the needs of pedestrians and motor vehicle drivers and everyone who is impacted by this. So I know that finding the right balance is not easy, so I do thank you for your devotion. Thank you, and keeping on to me is not what you're doing. It's certainly no trouble. It is a pleasure. Thank you, Councillor Butler.
Thanks, Rennie, for the presentation. When you done these results, were they just in the summertime? Like you're talking about Purdy, Pleasant, Lonsdale? When we had students for the summers, that when that was done?
All of them. Yeah, and the pre would have been June-ish. Previous year. So the pre-data, installation data would have been the previous year, so 2023. And then the post-installation data would have been in the fall because these measures were installed in the summer. So we were looking at September-ish, October for the post data.
Yeah, I think, so it's really not, it wouldn't be up to date data like, because what I'm looking at is Twin Oaks, for instance. We had put in the raised crosswalks, but we hadn't, if you remember, it was really late in the year when we finally got the painting lines on Twin Oaks. And I find since we put them lines on, that it's lowered the rate of speed again.
Okay, we'll probably have to confirm that if the data was prior or after the line markings. But you're right, but Councillor Butler, there was a delay between the speed humps and the actual line painting.
Yes. My next question is so I find when I use streets with that, with the speed bumps, are they just all asphalt? So are they starting to lower with the traffic? Like I find like on Twin Oaks, the one in front of the Y, it doesn't seem to be as high now. Like is it compacting more?
They yes, the first part of your question, they are all asphalt. There's no other material in between them. And as far as the installation goes, you could probably see a bit of a settlement that would normally happen the first week, not something that would happen over time. Now, however, with the plows in a few years from now, we might see it kind of chip away, and it's something we may need to address. But once the asphalt kind of settle and stop its heating process, the shape you have there should remain relatively the same.
Okay, and my last question is, the ones with the gaps, like on Lonsdale, and there's a couple others around town. I find that the large half-ton trucks are kind of like
straddling them.
Straddling them?
Yes.
And also, I've in the fall, just before they put the motorcycles away, I just happened to turn on to Lonsdale, and there was two motorcycles ahead of me, and they just zinged through them. Like, so they're not designed for motorcycles. So my last thing we'll say is, and my statement is that you can't fix stupid when it comes to driving. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I'd just like to add that we've noticed that too. We had those comments where larger vehicle straddle them. The intent was for emergency vehicle and our Kodiak buses to be able to pass without interruption. But that's why, as I mentioned in the presentation, you'll see more of the traditional speed hump that go basically from curb to curb, just based on that feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Steves.
Thank you, Mayor Arnold. Renee and team, thank you for your important work. I can see this as being an anticipated, exciting event every year to find out what roads are going to be done. My question revolves around Rennick, and I've just got in my notes here, Ryan versus Rennick. I don't get a lot of complaints specific to Rennick. I get complaints about Ryan. And so I know that we did a little bit from the traffic circle to Northrop Fry on Ryan, having the speed hump there. But my plea here is the traffic circle on the way to Hildegard. And there's apartment buildings that have just gone up there, and a lot of traffic, a lot of roads coming on to Ryan. And I don't know if that would be considered an arterial road. I don't know the specific wording on that, but certainly well used. So did Rennick beat out Ryan? Is Rennick the ultimate road? Did they win the prize this year? What went into Rennick?
Yes. Thank you for the question, Councillor Steves. Yeah, so Ryan Road is a collector road, so it's higher classification than a local street, but lower than an arterial, but it's definitely an important roadway. So would be Rennick, but probably lower volumes, as we understand, than Ryan. So Rennick did score high. It came from probably a couple of concerned residents, and so that's our policy. We have a concerned resident, and we start looking at the data. We crunched the number, and it scored pretty high. So it made the cut this year. And for Ryan Street, Ryder just informed me that we did get a specific request from the RCMP to look at Ryan Road. So now that's part of our number crunching, and it will be part of the next maybe 20 or 30 streets that we're going to look at. So it's going to be considered for, inclusion in our future renewal program. But our plate is full for 2025 when it comes to the candidates and the budget we have.
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to Rennick for sure, but it was just a surprise that it beat out Ryan. So I'm hearing that Ryan has made the playoffs, but Rennick takes home the title this year. Okay, thank you.
Terrific. I don't see any other questions on this topic. I think we can go to the vote. And it looks like it passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Nancy.
much, Renee.
The next item is CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund Year 1 Report and Update, and Josh Davies is here to provide council that update.
And good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Yeah, so it would have been just over a year ago that in 2023 November that we came forward with our contribution agreement and execution with CMHC. So following a report to CMHC, which was due in mid-December, we felt it was a good time to come to council and present some of the results of year 1 of the Housing Accelerator Fund. So the purpose of this presentation, not for any decisions, but purely for information purposes, is to provide you with an update on the Housing Accelerator Fund and our action plan, which includes a summary of housing data from the first year of HAV, and we'll end with a discussion and discuss our plan, for the second year of the Housing Accelerator Fund and our next steps. So as council is aware, the total amount of the Housing Accelerator Fund funding that was made to the city is about $15.6 million. Funding is made annually, subject to performance requirements. So I'm happy to say that after our first installment, I believe we did receive our second installment last week, on Monday last week. So we're well on our way, and the funding amount was in full. Seeing the city's action plan is and the use of our funds overall has been broken out over the next 4 years. It includes systemic initiatives, which I'll be getting into, our housing grant programs, which I'll be touching on, and some staffing as well. So the funding was very timely, and we were able to use it in a way that was going to solve some potential log jams for Moncton, and so far, so good, which I'll expand on here shortly. The Housing Accelerator Fund target, again, this is the commitment that the city made to CMHC as part of the that actual signed document, is an overall housing supply target between 2024 and 2026 of around 2,500 housing units, which would average out to be about 843 units per year. So within that growth target, there are some additional targets that would need to be met, which include around 1,200 missing middle housing units. So that could include anything in the city's context from a 2-unit dwelling up to a 4-story development. 1,072 other multi-unit housing units, so anything that would be considered 5-story and above, and an overall target of 3% for affordable units, and which would be about a total of 75 over the course of the 2,529 units we've committed to. What we're using in terms of a definition of affordable housing is nonprofits. So the nonprofit housing providers are sort of meeting our definition of affordable, as they are the ones like with their boots on the ground and really know the financial requirements of the clients that they're working with. And so just to provide, I guess, an overview of some of the things we're working on, there's a number of housing initiatives that are within our department, within other departments that either we are participating with or others taking the lead. So these would include, but are not limited to, substantial infrastructure investment, the Mountain Road and Worthington Avenue connection. I believe towards the end of the year, the roundabout itself has been completed and looks good, and we're excited to continue working with Shanex on their master plan, and we are very hopeful that we're getting close to a finished product that we could bring to you in terms of a rezoning and show the plan for that whole 85 acres beyond their campus. Other items include the streamlining of the zoning bylaw. So as council will recall, we did have a pretty extensive exercise in terms of reducing the number of conditional uses that we have in our zoning bylaw, again, into an attempt to streamline our permitting process. This would include the 4-unit as of right and accessory dwelling unit expansion amendments. And it's quite timely. So on Thursday night, from 7 to 9 p.m. in the City Hall lobby, we'll be hosting our final public engagement session. To date, the support and the questions have been quite positive, and would encourage you to attend. It'll give you a bit of a snapshot in terms of what we're looking at in terms of our zoning regulations and our standards and the work that's been done to date. Last week, we did have a session with our developers and surveyors that are working in our new and emerging growth areas. And they were very receptive to what we were proposing, and a lot of the things that we are looking at in the Moncton context make sense to them. So I think they were going to be very supportive of what's being proposed. As part of our municipal plan review, we're looking at an inclusionary zoning and density bonus study. So quite timely with the municipal plan review, we were able to tack that on to that work because it will inform much of the potential zoning and structure that we're looking at from a housing perspective in our future development. E-permitting is one that we're carrying over the full 4 years of HAF, just to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is going to be very productive. So that one continues to move. The creation of new development charge areas, which I know council is familiar with in terms of the work we're doing there to open up new areas to develop. And then an efficient multi-use residential design. So it's quite interesting. CMHC is in the process of working on its housing catalog, which will be made available to the public to pick up a set of plans that are essentially rubber stamped by municipalities so long as they meet the code. We're going to be looking at one ourselves for up to 8 units in terms of infill design. So that project is getting underway with a RFP to be issued shortly. Amongst the other funded actions we have are a transit growth strategy through our colleagues at Kodiak Transpo, a surplus land strategy that we will hopefully be completing this year, hopefully getting started on that in the next month or so. A transit planner who will be helping out on that transit growth strategy on a contract position. Alex Forbes, our municipal plan coordinator that you've met, has been retained, I should say, through funding through HAF. A solicitor, again, through contract, and one of our development officers at our very busy front counter. So you can see how the funding, again, we're getting about $4 million a year, but how efficiently we're able to use those funds in order to kind of meet the needs that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis while also looking forward. So the stats. It's important to note, I think that we had just come out through economic development with stats for the calendar year of January to December. The HAF reporting period is from the time we signed the agreement with CMHC to the 1 year mark. So in this case, we're looking at mid-November to mid-November 2023 to mid-November 2024. Our overall net increase, so that would include any housing and the demolitions afforded as well. So the demolitions would kind of count as a minus towards our total. We had a total of 904 housing units permitted, which include 564 of that missing middle category I referred to, 281 of others, so any 5-story and above in multi-unit, which would typically be somewhat of a, I guess, a down year compared to some of our other projects. But as we mentioned in some other discussions, was that 2024 was a bit of a blueprint year for the city where we had a lot of big plans coming forward for approval to council. And so once council gives its approval, there is quite a bit of work, especially for these larger buildings, that need to be done in terms of studies and other like building permit documentation before they can come to apply. So we would anticipate that you'll see that number from 281 grow quite substantially. And council is more aware of some of those big projects in the downtown that we are very hopeful will be kicking off in 2025. And on an interesting note, we hit about half of our target in terms of affordable housing units. So again, we were looking at about 76 over the course of the 3 years. We're already at 38, and it is anticipated that we are going to see substantially more units coming on stream in 2025 based on the projects that the planning team are currently working with. But in terms of our grant programs, we have several, and then the CRF kind of touched on the number of units and the funds allocated. But in total, as a summary, we allocated 1.77 million of that total around 8 million that we've had allocated for the course of half. But what's interesting is you'll see the units incentivized as 150, but the leverage that we've been able to generate, especially in the downtown and in our growth areas, is about 387. So that we're almost getting about two times and some more units through this program. And I would argue that it's been very successful with more plans on the way. So we're aware of other projects that are basically on the edge of submitting their permits and that will qualify. So we'll be able to add to this again. So looking, and by the time we get to December 25, we'll be doing another version of this table. And I think you'll see that even more funds will be allocated based on the projects that we expect to come through the door. And of interest, actually, I think it would be an interesting point as well, is that in terms of the accessory dwelling unit grant program, we historically probably have had not a lot of permits that have come through the door. In year one of half, we used all 30 applications that we had envisioned for that program. So that's the program where someone looking to add an additional unit, whether through new construction or through renovation, up to $10,000 would be made available, and every single application was allocated in year one. Which is a bit of a problem because it's capped, but it's a good problem to have to show the sort of the success of the program and the potential that it has. So in terms of looking ahead to year two, the initial permit data and forecasted development, again, as I mentioned, it suggests strong continued residential development. As part of our year two work, our half administration will continue to work on its action plan, including our grant programs. And I'd have to give a shout out to our team working with finance, economic development, and social inclusion. My colleague Arish Dami has done a really great job keeping me on track in terms of the applications that are coming through the door and making sure that the committee is able to meet as soon as those applications come through the door in order to get them approved and get them in the queue. So a lot of hard work being done there, and certainly things are moving in the right direction. The undertaking of the surplus land strategy, continued investment in infrastructure, and as I mentioned, more work on the zoning bylaw to continue our work in reducing barriers to housing and increasing the capacity of the city's overall housing supply. So to conclude my presentation, and I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. And you mentioned Arish's work. Perhaps you'd introduce your other new colleague who's on week two.
Absolutely. So yeah, lucky enough to sit next to the mayor on our bus tour last week. So Christopher Hardy has come to join us as a senior planner in the policy shop. So you'll be getting to see him in the coming weeks and months as he gets involved in some of these files, and he'll be up speaking to you on some of the exciting stuff that we're working on. And I think he's excited to be here. And I'd say he probably had one of the more interesting first weeks as it comes to planning, because he's dived right in. So we're really lucky to have him. So yeah.
Great. Councillor Bourgeois, go ahead.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Merci beaucoup, Josh. Could you expand a little bit on, I guess, the final comment that you make in the council report form? Based on current housing trends, permit data, and forecast growth, it is anticipated that the city will likely exceed its overall housing supply growth target that is agreed to. Could you remind us what that target is and what percentage we've achieved or surpassed?
Yeah, so in the total amount is about 2,500 and change units over the 3-year half course. We're 36% of the way there now. And knowing some of the projects, so for example, the Gateway Towers is pretty close to coming in. We're hoping, for example, at the Botsford project, some of those big unit projects are going to be coming through the door. And a lot of the master planned areas that council would have looked at last year, for example, on McLaughlin, some of those bigger files that have come through, now that the kind of the work, the roads are getting built, the permits are going to start coming through the door. So we're already 36% of the way there. And again, so for us, a big building in the downtown would accumulate a big percentage. Like, so if we have a 150 unit building, that's just over 7 to 8% just in itself to hit our target. And we're confident, again, through some of the projects in our new and emerging growth areas, we're starting to see some of those 2-3 story apartments that are coming on stream as well. So I think based on our projections and the files that we're aware of in the planning department, we'll be probably in a position, we'll be above and beyond that 2,500. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a question that I've been asking Mr. Siliker for many years. How do we know that this program made difference? I remember the downtown development, I don't remember what it's called, but subsidy as well. And I've only talked to about maybe 4 developers where I've asked the question. And if my memory serves me correctly, 2 told me that it wouldn't have made a difference. They would have gone ahead anyways, but they're not going to spit on free money coming from the city. But the other 2 said that, yeah, that was sort of like the drop that the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's a negative.
Yeah.
You know, it made the difference. So
Yeah, kind of push
do
them
we
over the line.
measure?
Yeah.
Do we survey the developers to say, you know, they're not going to say no, stop the program because they benefit from it, but they have comments on it?
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of questions around, especially in some of our suburban areas where development charges either do or don't apply. So for example, in the north end.
Je vous donnerai un exemple. Dans la section nord de la ville, il n'y a pas beaucoup de fonds disponibles pour les développeurs, donc ils voudraient bien être inclus, mais dans la région plus à l'est, il y a beaucoup de logements qui se fait et les subventions se font approuver. Donc, ils disent que c'est très utile pour eux puisqu'ils savent que le financement leur est disponible. Aussi, ça a été une grande réussite pour les organismes à but non lucratif. Comme le conseil le sait, on a pu modifier notre politique et la conseillère Cormier était là pour Housing for Life. C'était très bénéfique. Et en plus, beaucoup de développeurs ont été heureux qu'il y a eu un changement au niveau des utilisations permises. Donc, les maisons row house avaient plus de difficultés à se faire approuver, mais maintenant, s'ils satisfont aux normes, ils peuvent être beaucoup plus facilement approuvés. Il n'y a pas eu de réunion de consultation nécessaire. Et il y a aussi un énorme bénéfice pour la durabilité. Donc, quand on investit dans l'infrastructure, par exemple, les terres HNX feront une grande partie du développement résidentiel que nous allons voir pour la ville. Donc, je crois que ça a coché beaucoup de cases. Et dans la première année, c'est difficile à voir exactement quelles ont été les différences. Mais dans 5 à 10 ans, ces changements systémiques vont avoir eu leur emprise. Il y aurait énormément de bénéfices. Merci. J'ai une dernière question.
Josh, Mr. Davis.
C'est la deuxième fois que Josh Davis a mentionné Shenix.
Pecuniary interest to be gained, but whenever we discuss Shanix, does that put the councillor in a conflict of interest position? There's no decision to be made here, so I would suspect that it'd be no, but can you advise us?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Bourgeois. When there's no decision being made, there's typically not a conflict situation. In other cases, it's up to the elected official to make their own decision. It's not really for me to say that person is in conflict or not. I can advise on what the legislation says about conflict of interest, but I can't advise individual elected officials whether or not they're in conflict.
Okay, thank you. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Councillor Richard.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Thanks for the update, Josh. Thank you to the team. You mentioned to keep him in line, so.
Keep me in line, yeah, that's
You,
right, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, good job. In the other funded actions, you mentioned transit growth strategy, Kodiak Transpo. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so I guess a lot of this half stuff came through very good timing because we were just getting through our urban growth strategy as well. So the transit growth strategy is an opportunity for Kodiak Transpo to look at their current state in terms of their service, but also looking forward to where they might go in conjunction with the urban growth strategy. So as council is aware, we've identified several emerging growth areas through the growth strategy that have unit targets and sort of the infrastructure needed in terms of what's going to be required to go into these areas. We're working with Kodiak Transit. They'll be applying their sort of transit lens to say, okay, well, if we're growing by 16,000 housing units, 34,000 residents. What does that mean for transit? And if we're going to look at potential new, whether it's new routes or more infrastructure required over the course of the growth strategy in that 25 years, it helps them sort of plan for the future and helps them be a little more proactive versus being, not to say they're reactive, but it allows them to kind of do some forward planning. And there also will be a transit planner that may be looking at some of our files that we're working on in planning as a part of a development review process and say, I would like to have bus laybys here in some of these new and emerging areas. So the Vision Lands, for example, what does that world look like if there was to be like a transit sort of station and a hub? How would we go about doing that? And a lot of that future planning on the transit side while working within the growth strategy and some of those projections that we've identified through the growth strategy.
That's great details.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think their consultant is just starting to get going. So I would expect they may come to a similar presentation at Committee of the Whole and provide a bit of an update on what they're doing and kind of have that sort of similar type presentation for your guys' review.
So Kodiak Transpo kind of strike me because I'm also on the board for Ability Transit. And thank you to Greg for being there with us at times. So I wasn't sure if there was anything is there anything here to help Ability Transit as well, or because they work hand in hand with Kodiak Transpo. So
Yeah, I would say we can reach out to Angela and just advise that if there, and they would be consultate as a sort of a potentially affected party by this transit strategy, how they may be able to engage with them and sort of have those conversations. So we can easily just let Angela know, and she's probably on top of it already. So.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that as much as their ridership is growing, Ability
Absolutely.
as well. So.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you, Josh and team. I don't see any other questions. There was no decision for council, but really appreciate this update with lots more to come in this after this blueprint year is over, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And on Thursday night, I think you'll find the information session in the lobby to be very informative.
Okay.
It starts at 7 and it will be Jim Scott and I will be leading the presentation. So,
Excellent. Thank you.
thank you.
I think that concludes today's agenda. I would take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Richard.